Hey everybody, what's up from Pokemon Classics, reminding you that the classics never go out of style. There's been a lot of talk on this channel and a number of other channels about the market fundamentals, but that begs the question of what are those fundamentals? Today, in this video, I wanted to address the top 5 market fundamentals and my opinion on how they can be helpful in appraising and evaluating future collection pieces, whether you're looking to invest or potentially just build your own collection. Now, in my humble opinion, these 5 market fundamentals include rarity, scarcity, condition, popularity, and history, and together they all culminate to make up the collectability of any given item, whether it's an individual card that's raw, a graded card, or even a sealed product. Personally, I try to apply these different fundamentals whenever making a very significant collection decision, whether it's an item that I'm looking to sell, or a different item or card that I'm looking to buy to add to my collection. And I feel like this information is more relevant now than perhaps ever due to the market trajectory. So often we see markets move in really irrational ways. We saw that with that peak exuberance in 2020 and 2021, but now the market is correcting really heavily. And I think personally there are a number of cards with strong fundamentals that are getting caught in the currents of the overall negative market sentiment. And this is perhaps where the fundamentals come into play. Now, I don't know if you guys remember playing the original Pokemon Game Boy games. We're going way back to red and blue and yellow. But at the very end of the player's guide, there would be stat graphs for each individual Pokemon shaped like a pentagon. And on each one of those vertices of the pentagon, there were different types of stats available. And the larger surface area you covered of that pentagon, well, the better all around that Pokemon was. This is the exact same way that I see the fundamentals at work. It's not just one of them, it's a combination of all of them. And again, they include rarity, scarcity, condition, popularity, and history. And if you can include a little bit of all 5 of those, a little slice of each, well, you probably have a strong item with a lot of long-term potential growth. At least, that's how I see it. Anyway, I'll stop rambling about the good old days, and let's go ahead and break down each of these fundamentals. The first fundamental is rarity, and this is all about the difficulty of acquisition, whether we're talking an individual card or a particular product. Now, we all know that cards have different rarity symbols like commons, uncommons, rares, holographic rares, and any number of new rarity tiers that exist in more modern sets. But rarity is a lot more than just this. We also need to take into consideration the total production quantity, how many of the card actually exist out there in the world. The pull rates, which can differ considerably depending on what product and what era we're looking at. And then finally, the distribution method. Some cards have really unique circumstances behind how they were distributed. That's going to affect their overall rarity. Now, this is going to be obvious to most of you, but pull rates matter, and I wanted to put some actual tangible numbers to this. In a base set box, for example, you get 36 packs of 11 cards each. Now, in each of these packs, there's 2 energy cards, 5 common cards, 3 uncommon cards, and 1 rare or holographic rare. Now, more importantly, only 1 out of every 3 packs is a holographic card. So although any individual common you might pull 5.625 of per box, or uncommon, since there's 108 in total, you're expected about 3.375. If you're looking at pulling a Charizard or any other individual holographic card, you can only expect about 0.8 of those per box, not even 1 full set. Now, this just goes to show that some cards are inherently more rare than others. Now, that's not to say that base set unlimited cards are all that rare to begin with, especially given their high production quantities. But that's one of the problems people often run into, is the illusion of rarity where it doesn't actually exist. Take, for example, the first edition Jungle Pikachu card. Now, in Jungle packs, you actually get 7 commons per pack, since there's no energies, meaning you can expect to pull 252 commons per box. That means a first edition Jungle Pikachu should show up 15.75 times or so per box. It's not a very rare card. On the other hand, the promo first edition Jungle Pikachu was estimated to be included in 1 in every 3 boxes, meaning you can expect about 0.33 or 1/3 of your boxes to contain one. It's a much safer card, and it's a lot rarer. Again, knowing the production quantities, the pull rates, and the distribution methods is absolutely essential to effectively appraising the rarity of a card or product. Next, let's talk about scarcity. Scarcity is all about the market availability of a card or product, And this has to do with how many copies are for sale at any given time, the population reports for that card, as well as the overall production quantity. When it comes to supply and demand, scarcity is much more aligned with the supply side of the equation. Take, for example, these two cards, a PSA 10 Unlimited Charizard and a PSA 10 First Edition Typhlosion 17. Now, the Charizard currently has 450 cards in the population report, with 15 new copies added just last year alone. At any given time, you can find this card readily available on sites like eBay. Currently, there are 10 copies available for sale. The Typhlosion 17, on the other hand, has almost no market availability. In fact, right now on eBay, there are currently 0 copies available for sale. That's because this card is very difficult to find, with a population of only 12. It's a very scarce card, and as a result commands a much higher price tag than the Charizard. I believe the last sale of Charizard went for about $10,000, while the T17, the Typhlosion, went for about $40,000. This demonstrates the power of scarcity, particularly for those low population items that have a high opportunity cost associated with them. But we also need to be careful of artificial scarcity. Cards that have a really high ungraded supply and perhaps hadn't entered the population reports because it wasn't advantageous to grade them. We saw this in a number of different ways last year, whether it was with commons and uncommons, or the first edition jungle cards like Pikachu selling for $1,000+ in a PSA 10. Currently, there are over 60 copies of that card in PSA 10 on eBay, and they're all struggling and competing with each other. Or maybe it's just cards that are in lower quality and are a much lower grade, and therefore have less demand. So again, scarcity is about more than just population reports. It's about understanding market availability in its full context. Our third fundamental is condition, and this is all about the quality of the item or the card. In order to understand condition, you need to understand grading criteria and scales used by different companies, how difficult certain items or sets are to grade, as well as the population reports for those items. Now, I'm not going to do a deep dive in how to grade your cards. I've already made a video like that, which I'll link up here. What I do want to do is address the different criteria that grading companies use to assess condition. When assessing a card, grading companies generally use 4 factors. They look at the surface area of the card, the edges, both on the front and the back side, the corners of the card, as well as the centering of the borders, both on the front and the back. Together, all 4 of these combine to form a numerical score, usually given between a grade of 1 and 10. Now, obviously, the higher the number, the closer to mint condition that card is supposed to be, but I would caution you all to be careful with your condition assumptions. Whether you're appraising cards raw yourself, personally, or you're putting your faith into a third-party grader or individual to make that assessment for you, it can be very difficult, because oftentimes there are small, minuscule flaws that are only visible with extra outside light and magnification. And so, the more awareness and experience you can have assessing the condition of cards, the better off you'll be with this fundamental. Next, for fundamental 4, we have popularity, or the desirability of a card or product to a mass audience. Now, this can be seen with individual species of Pokemon, it can be seen with particular sets or types of products, as well as different variants or styles of cards that are preferred by collectors. Bringing this back to supply and demand, popularity is much more aligned with the demand side of the equation, but can still be a very powerful force. Now let's take a look at a couple of examples from one of my favorite sets, Neo Discovery. First, we have the first edition Umbreon in PSA 9 with a price tag of $1,110. Now this card has a pretty high population of 337 copies in a PSA 9. On the other hand, we have Yanma with a population that's much lower at 193. That's 144 copies fewer, but yet it still has a significantly lower price tag of $216. Now they're both the same condition, they're both PSA 9s, they're both first edition, so the only explanatory factor here is that Umbreon is a much more popular Pokemon, and in particular, this artwork is one that's a lot more desirable. Popularity can certainly be a catalyst for value, but so can scarcity, and I think we need to be careful at overvaluing one at the cost of the other. For example, if we took these same exact 2 cards and upgraded them to their PSA 10 equivalents, the situation changes pretty drastically. For example, the Umbreon in PSA 10 sells for about $6,000 with a population of 89. On the other hand, the Yanma, with a population of 14, last sold for $15,400. Now this is a direct flip-flop from earlier, where the Umbreon, despite having a much higher population, was outpacing the Yanma in value by a ratio of about 5-1. Here though, the Yanma wins out because of its scarcity. So again, it's a combination of both of these factors. Again, understanding the pulse of the market with what's well-liked, what's popular, what's desirable, is one of the many things you can do to increase your effectiveness in the hobby. Our final fundamental is history, and here we're talking about the significance to the hobby as well as to its origins. Perhaps this card or item had unique release circumstances around it, maybe it was important to the development of the trading card game, or perhaps there was some sort of special circumstances or story tied to this card or product. There are a number of different items and classes of items that demonstrate this idea of historical significance. For example, trophy cards, or any cards that were given out at special Pokemon events, often have a specific story associated with them. There are also a number of error cards, and collectors out there that like to capture and collect the different mistakes and misprints throughout Pokemon's production run. It's a pretty interesting backstory. Finally, there are cards that demonstrate the development and production of the Pokemon trading card game, first appearances of certain cards, prototypes of certain cards, and other things that just show us how Pokemon has evolved over the course of its history. That is, after all, one of the reasons why people collect items in the first place, is that connection back to the past. However, we do need to be careful, though, that that connection is meaningful and that we're not pursuing items that are mass-produced and overly distributed. Just to give a couple quick examples of this, we first have the E3 Pikachu, which came in two different variants, the Yellow Cheek version and the Red Cheek version. Now, the Yellow Cheek version was distributed through Nintendo Power Magazine all across the country, and it was mass-produced. On the other hand, the Red Cheek version was issued in person at the 1998 E3 convention. Therefore, it's a lot more rare and it has a lot more historical significance. Perhaps the best example of this, though, is the first edition base set Machamp, which every collector and their brother and sister and everyone thought of as valuable because of that first edition stamp. However, what we know is that the base set starter decks all contain that first edition Machamp, and it was mass-produced unlike any other card from Wizards of the Coast. Now, a better equivalent of that would be the Trainer Deck A Machamp, which had an extremely limited release in those practice decks that were only issued to certain Wizards of the Coast sponsored leagues, and so this one had a very limited release and is very difficult to find. That's the difference between something having historical significance versus just being mass-produced and distributed. At the end of the day, the fundamentals simply boil down to educating yourself on the cards and items that you're collecting, on the market as a whole, as well as on the background and the history of Pokemon. And while I do think we'll continue seeing some negative downward pressure in the Pokemon market, there are a number of items that have strong fundamentals that I feel like are being swept along in the current of negative market sentiment and perhaps are getting to the point of being undervalued, so there may be some buying opportunities here in the future. What I'll be looking for, though, are the 5 fundamentals: rarity, scarcity, condition, popularity, and history. These fundamentals have served me well, and I hope that they can help you too. Anyway, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this one. I'm Pokemon Classics, reminding you that the classics never go out of style. We'll see y'all with the next video. Until then, stay well and enjoy collecting. Bye, everybody. Hey guys, I just wanted to say a quick thanks to my patrons for supporting the channel. If you have any interest in becoming a patron yourself, check out the link to my Patreon below. For more market analysis videos, you can click on one of these two. They're pretty good, at least I think so. Anyway, you should go check them out. I dare you. I don't really know what else to say, so I'll just disappear now. Bye-bye.